Hey, welcome to another typology interview. We have Frank James. How's it going, Frank?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I think
Great.
there's two questions we need to get out of the way before we start. So first
Okay.
thing, what's the deal with your hair journey and where is it going in the future?
Hair, so I had been growing it out before, and once you start, you feel like, oh, I put so much time into this. It's a sunk cost fallacy. And so now I quite like it short. So I think I'm going to keep it short. I'm not growing the beard out at least until, some major terrible life event happens. But
All right.
yeah, I
Yes.
think I'm settled for a while.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that one. Then the
So
other
I'm
one
glad
is,
I'm glad to clear the air with it.
all right, yeah. Then the other question we need to clear the air with is, did you ever get used to using the new Google?
I did eventually. Yeah, I might
Yeah.
have overreacted. Might have. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the,
No,
the
no, it was,
Google.
I got it. It was a satire video. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. The Google, the Gmail redesign, I was so angry when I first saw it. But then, you just have to use it. There's no way around it. So
Yeah. Right.
I battled through.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. So you haven't officially been typed in OP, but like I'd like to talk about your type anyways, your channel and sort of maybe your history and typology and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's start there. Where did you start typology? When did you get into it?
It was just a couple years ago, and some friends threw around. Apart from me, some friends were talking about it. Somehow I came up in the conversation, and they said, "We think you're this type," and I was like, "Okay, I don't care." But it was like in the back of my mind still. I was like, "Huh, what? I wonder what this personality type stuff is all about." And uh, just went to one of the infamous online tests, and came up INFJ just like everyone else. And then when I asked my friends, what type did you think I was? They're like, oh, INFJ. So that correlation, I guess,
Right.
um, that was what made me think maybe there was something to it.
Uh-huh.
Because when I got the result online, it didn't really phase me much. I was like, okay, I guess it seems like me. So, but then I just started to get more into it, mostly through YouTube. I think looking at other YouTubers who talked about INFJ stuff, especially Tom Davison was one of my favorites. And that kind of inspired me to want to do YouTube stuff in a similar vein. And just through that, like doing YouTube about that sort of like led me into learning more about it. So you can tell when you watch my earliest videos, it's kind of iffy, like what what I'm talking about. But then around a little over a year ago, that's when I stumbled on Dave Superpower's channel and got heavily into that, and then eventually started taking the objective personality classes, and so now
Right.
I'm fully initiated, and once it gets in your mind, you can't stop thinking about typology. So
Right. Yeah.
so I'm lost. I'm you know
Yeah. So like what was the idea behind your YouTube channel? Just getting out INFJ stuff or
yeah, at
typology in
first.
general?
Well, I mean, yeah, if you kind of look at it, at first it was sort of just like more straight up vlog type stuff, just talking about stuff that was going on in my life,
Right.
and trying to connect it to typology in a way. um I guess I don't know, because it's at that time, not knowing that much about it, I was resonating with what other YouTubers were doing in that vein. And I thought, if I could somehow connect it to a broader thing, because there's not much point, I think, in making vlogs about what's going on in your life or how you feel, because why would anyone care? But if you can connect it to a
Right.
bigger thing, I was like, people might relate to this if
Uh-huh.
if maybe everyone else is going through the same thing.
Right.
And that's where it went from there. And then once I started to learn more about typology, then I was like, I should probably start teaching this as well. It's just like a natural thing to want to make videos that were more teaching oriented,
Right.
and less so just talking about the bar I went to last night. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's like
Yes.
so you see that as blast savior too, that like you have like your first default mode is just go and talk about what you have on your mind and stuff.
Yeah, there's one thing that Dave said once that was like a blaster is the kind of person who learns something for 5 minutes and then wants to teach an hour-long lecture on it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh crap, that's that's so yeah. So basically as soon as it's like very little consuming to begin with. It's just like I pick up something and I'm like, oh, I got it. And then I can like extrapolate that out further.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, that's how it kind of snowballed. And so now I've like branched out. I still talk about typology because that seems to be like kind of a lightning rod way to get people's attention.
Right.
And but I still enjoy talking about personal development in general
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Now I've started to do comedy videos because that seems to be, I enjoy doing comedy. I enjoy acting. So, and it's
Right.
big hit. So
So yeah, one of the things I see in your videos is there's lots of energy dominant information. Like you're very playful, and like you were typed as play last, and
yeah.
with basically info dominant. And so, how did you figure out how to do that energy dominant stuff?
I it's something you have to like turn on. Uh, yeah. So that is a good question. I mean, I think because I have a background in theater, so it's kind of just a a thing I've learned over time how to like turn it on, for the camera.
Right.
And I mean, in real life, people who know me in real life know that I'm not playful at all. I'm like no fun basically. So uh, it's something you learn over time. Also, if you watch my earliest videos, I am like it's like so much sleep energy, and it's embarrassing to watch now. So having to edit myself and watch myself so much, I realized that it's just the YouTube thing you have to do. It's like you have to come at people with some level of energy, even though I'm still pretty low energy in my videos. I've learned to like pump it up a bit, and
Right.
it's a bit of acting.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
And lots of creativity too. Like I don't think I've seen it done anywhere else where maybe other people did it, but where they're just like, okay, here's the commercial, and you time it out perfect. It's like
Yeah.
attention to
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah. I think, well, that's the thing is it's like when you're doing, well, I forget if I tried first without drawing attention to it, but it's like people in the comments were like, oh, I really didn't like that when the commercial scared me. And I don't like
Oh
it
wow.
either. When you're watching a video and it's like mid-sentence, it cuts off to a commercial
Right.
for Grammarly or something. So, um, yeah, so I just felt like for the
No sponsor
flow,
here though.
right. Yeah. So I just felt like for the flow of videos, it is just a lot. It's more courteous to the
Yeah.
viewer that hey, a commercial's coming at you. And what makes me laugh is I get comments all the time that are like, "How did you know when the commercial was going to be?" And it's like, I placed them. It's when you see YouTubers who have commercials in random spots, they did that. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I get to pick when they are, and if I wanted to, I could put like 10 commercials in a video, but I feel like that's overdoing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Cool, man.
it's just for the flow, trying to be courteous, trying to warn people so that they don't just feel like, oh, he's taking advantage of me by putting a commercial randomly.
Yeah. Yeah, you're putting like also you're adding in like little skits and things like that that aren't they don't have to do with information just to jazz up the content. So like it's pretty impressive that you're able to do that as an info dominant, like that you take the attention, the care to do that. I guess it's your FE maybe.
Well, yeah, I think. Well, also, it's like the information still is kind of, in a way, what it's all revolving around.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like these recent ones that I've done that are kind of more parodies, like the 16 personalities doing whatever sketches. They all. It starts with like a lot of thinking of like, well, what actually do these types like? Well, it's like, what do these types do, and then how can I blow it out to this kind of absurd stereotype? And actually the objective personality classes have helped a lot with like picking up on all of those anecdotes and stuff.
Right.
So and I don't know, I guess you could say in a way it's like the energy is serving the information.
Ah, okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you get across the information in a not fun way, you who's going to watch?
Yeah,
Who's going to
exactly.
enjoy it? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. So let's talk about your functions. That's cool. Talking about them a bit.
We can try.
All right. Well, let's tell us a little bit about your NI. Like, this is your main savior. How do you
Yeah, well,
express
I
yourself?
would say, it's really, I'll be honest, because I feel like you don't hear this very often in these interviews, but I have a difficult time seeing the functions in
Yeah.
myself. Um, and it's only kind of like slightly in retrospect where I'm able to say, oh, I was like really hardcore trying to control all of this stuff, you know?
Uh-huh.
So that's what, most in general, I can see it when I am trying to over control situations. And even though if I were to go into this with my brain wiped clean and were to just learn the OP method, I might type myself differently,
I see. Yeah.
because I really see I feel like I see more of the extroverted sensing because I'm like I know that I mess up at it, so I'm like always trying to keep an eye on all the details.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so but yeah, I can sort of catch glimpses of that organizing function up at the top. And I think you can also see it kind of in I guess, the tidal waves of like, oh, I've ignored all the sensory stuff for a long time, and now it's coming to get me. It's
Right.
coming to get me to pay my dues. And yeah, so that one is definitely kind of a difficult one to see.
But like, you seem like you're doing okay with the sensory, like especially with like all your hair stuff. Like, I guess you were struggling with it for a while, but now like you've decided I'm going to keep it like this, my hair. And then like
Yeah,
you have like decorations in your room I see as well. Like you're paying attention to it at least.
yeah, and it definitely has to. It takes a bit of effort. It's like because for a few, like I don't know, 2 months after I moved in here, like this room was totally bare, and I was like, why? What is the point of putting up things? And then I I guess I realized, like, for videos especially. I mean, yeah, it's for myself too because there's stuff on other walls that you never see in videos. But I
Right.
was like, I gotta spruce this place up so it looks pretty. I
Mhm.
had to tap into some of that SF popularity to make sure that it looked like a good product.
Right.
Like this is the set design sort of. And I mean, it's not that amazing, but it's like something interesting to look at, something to grab the eye a little bit, so it's not just me and nothing. You know?
As a lead NI, do you feel like everything is connected in some way? Like there's some connection with it and has the same sort of basis to it?
Yeah, I guess. Well, now that you bring that up, I will say that I've always had this. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe this tendency or this drive to bring everything into like one unifying concept,
Right.
like everything about life,
Right.
uh, or at least as few concepts as possible, and to be like, oh, everything revolves around this one thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that is also kind of when I can catch it, is when I look back and I realize that it's always been that's always been a thing with me, is wanting to use that funnel to really get things down into the simplest possible uh,
Ideal.
pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you also feel like you're able to plan for the future a lot? Like, is that what you're spending most of your time doing as well, thinking about what's going to be? And
Yeah, definitely. I'm always thinking about the future, but in some ways I feel like, I don't know. I feel like everyone thinks about the future, but it's hard to know like what is normal, just what everyone does, and then
right,
where you are, a freak, you
right,
know. So there is a lot of forward lookingness with me, and I think that's always that's always caused this like low level anxiety all the time.
uh-huh.
So I don't know that I always am like the stereotype of thinking 10 years down the road, but it does enter my mind, quite often, several steps in it ahead.
Right. Do you
And
find that like anything actually goes according to plan, or they're just like up in the air plans that you plan on and they don't actually happen? Or are you hitting those milestones?
They can be a bit nebulous sometimes, you know, they can feel the plans I often make are very I don't know, they're very specific and I see them, but a lot of times it's bringing them into reality that can be a bit of a struggle, or like dealing with the process. Like you have this one big goal out there and you have to do all these little things up to it, and that can often trip me up.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I like to live there in that place in the future in my brain, but
Actually doing the work to get there, the SE day-to-day stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and also it's also not just doing the work. What it is when you realize that you have a lack of knowledge in an area that you need to know in order to get there, then
Uh,
it's like, oh no, I've got to gather all this stuff. You know, I've got to
right.
suddenly, I'm like purposefully going out of my way to use OP language.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like for instance, I want to eventually uh, do some more business kind of stuff related to my channel, and I'm like, well, in order to do that, I've got to like make a website, and that uh, intimidated me for a long time because it's like I don't really I've made a few dopey websites before, but I
Right.
don't know how to make something that is going to help you know, promote me. And it's like all of these things I've got to learn in order to then execute.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
And
bit
it,
overwhelming. Yeah.
yeah, and so I meant it's like at this place where I don't I put it off. I keep putting it off, and you know, because I know
Yeah.
that it's going to force me to take in new information, and I would rather just find a way to skate around it with what I know already.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's also like really tough for a single observer to deal with like the thing, doing the thing. And yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then you know, in some ways, it's interesting because I have play last, but and they, you know, Dave and Shan often talk about like how instead of consuming new information, you could play energy at where you're just like trying to get what other people did. And I find that I often do that, like rather than wanting
Uh-huh.
to like, I'll do both, but a lot of times rather than read an article about like how to make a website, I'd rather just ask some people who did
Yeah.
it. And it's like, okay, what did you do? You know,
So-
can I just replicate what you did? Um, and I don't know, because that's sort of play energy, but in a way, it's also consuming just through a person.
right. That's
Think
kind of
about
what play energy could be is sometimes too. Yeah. Do you think it
yeah.
could be maybe play above consume or consume above play is more?
I think play last is definitely the you know, that resonates with me. So
Okay.
yeah, consume last doesn't really. I've thought about it, and I mean I could be, because
Yeah.
I can be kind of a know-it-all, but I think um, more likely would be play last. But
Okay.
I'm not entirely convinced 100% of anything. So
Right. Yeah. Okay. What about your FE? Are you aware of that at all? Are you aware of how you use it?
yeah, somewhat. Yeah, what I've realized is that, at least the way that I am seeing it, is that a lot of times it's sort of like surveying the room to inform me of what I should do. It's maybe, I don't know. It doesn't always seem so direct as how they explain it as I need to get 10 people's approval before I can make a decision. It's sort of like approval in a oblique way where I'm like trying to read, would they, you
Would they
know,
approve
like
of this? Yeah.
would
Would
they
they?
approve of this? But I do often, but before I make decisions, I'm like, I got to make sure that people think this is good, you know, like people
Yeah.
like, and I've also noticed that a lot of times, even when I ask more of a TE question, like, what do you think about this? What I'm really looking for is an emotional response. Like if they give me
Right.
more of a logical answer, like what do they actually think of how it works? I'm like dissatisfied. But if they're like, oh my gosh, I love that idea, then I'm like, okay, that makes me feel better about doing
Right.
it.
Huh.
And yeah, so it is interesting because they talk about how TE and FE are actually way more similar than people realize.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, and I found that too, because even when it seems like I'm doing TE and like trying to figure out what works for everyone else, in a way, it's more of like working on an emotional level.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see that a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you aware also of like the spectrum of feelings, like aware of all the different kinds of feelings there are, and who might be feeling what, and if this person's not feeling appropriate for the situation and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I am in a group social situation, I'm looking around to see how engaged everyone is, and I can usually tell when someone feels left out of a conversation, and I'll try to pull them in. But I think, I don't know, sometimes it also feels like it doesn't feel like my first responsibility to do that, to
Right.
be like the lifeguard of a social situation. But it is like a definite awareness of like what everyone else is feeling about something. And then it becomes a thing of trying to fit in with that.
Uh-huh.
It's not just an awareness, but it's also like kind of twisting yourself around in order
Right.
to match the vibes around you. And then also I think I do the kind of the stratification of the putting things above each other in terms of value.
Right.
uh, I'm doing that all the time, and I it's weird because in some ways it feels like I'm just basing it off of what I'm feeling, but when I'm really honest with myself, I'm really easily influenced by everyone else
Uh-huh.
in terms of how I will view things.
Yeah, that sounds very feminine as well. Your FE.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
I would say without a doubt I have feminine FE. So
Right. Um, do you okay, let's change it up a bit. What about your TI? Are you using that at all? Like, do you see when that happens?
I have to like make a conscious effort to do that.
Right.
So I also, I do sort of see when I am in like demon swings, that's when it comes out.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't, it's kind of confusing, I think, because I can tell like when I am in a more, I don't know, when I'm in one of those demon swings, then I just become like super straight to the point and logical about
Hmm.
like, no, this is what's going to work. I don't care what you think or feel about it. But also, it's sort of like, I don't know, wouldn't you think that if in those moments where it's a little bit more high pressure, wouldn't you then want to go to your saviors? So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's because I'm being forced to use TI in those situations. And it's like, I have to make decisions quick and
Right.
they have to be based purely on my subjective reasoning. And I don't want to do it. And maybe that's what makes me get testy about it?
Yeah. It's also
Yeah.
double activated and it's masculine, so it should come out regularly, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a thing. And it is, I think because it's double activated, that does kind of give me a little bit of that IP feeling where I will, like on the surface, I will be like, oh yeah, I love that idea. That's great or whatever, just to make sure everyone feels good about it. And then on the inside, I'm like, that is so stupid. We're not
Yeah.
doing it. So yeah, I
I
don't
had to
let
work really hard to get there. I
yeah.
do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like in group situations where I have been like like if I have been for like back in college when I would be directing a scene in a class or something and the actors would have ideas and I was just like, this is not going to work. This is stupid. On the outside, I would be like, oh my gosh, that would be great. But you know what? We're not going to do that. So
Yeah.
it's like, it pains me to have to like put my foot down and be like, no, this is the decision of what's going to work.
Right.
Yeah, and it can make me feel, I feel like when I use it, it becomes obvious to me and I'm like, I'm being so selfish by making these decisions, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So
But in the end, it's selfless because it's for the good of the play. It's like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to justify it and be like, everyone will be happy in the end if they go through this pain right now.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Do you feel like you need that validation as well from the tribe? Like that's something that you're chasing?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like my life story. So, um, in a way, it feels like nothing like in its most unhealthy, like overblown forms. It's like nothing I do matters unless other people are reacting in a positive emotional way to it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it's, and it can be dangerous to do that because, especially on YouTube, it's dangerous because you get all kinds of people. So you'll always get some validation sometimes. And uh, it can be a hard line to walk when you do a certain video and you have a bunch of people say, this is great, I love this. But then inside, I'm like, this is not really how I see things working in the future. Like I'm not sure that this is a long-term strategy that's going to work for me. So um, yeah, validation is embarrassingly important to me.
That's really cool that you can admit that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we should all be a little embarrassed when we talk about our type. So
Yeah. No, thanks. I appreciate you doing that. Um, when you're sleeping, do you see that you're going over your known information a lot and you're processing it in a more logical way?
yeah, and that's something that was weird to kind of figure out is that when I am doing that processing, it is kind of like it's always logical. It's always
Yeah.
like trying to bang blocks together. So, and I would never, even if I had typed myself totally wrong, I think I would have always typed myself as a feeler. I don't think there's any way I would have typed myself as a thinker, but definitely when I am in that processing, it's always trying to get back to some kind of thing that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
It's never like trying to match it up with my values or anything like that.
Right.
So, and and it's interesting because if you look at that, the uh, the thing that they added recently, where it's like the most activated animal. So with blast, if it's blast sleep consumed, then sleep would be my most
Right. You're
like
double
prominent.
activated.
Yeah, my most prominent one, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's very true. So
Right.
um, it just I don't know, I just don't feel a need to express it as much. So I guess that's why you don't hear as much. Especially, I mean, in my videos, they're also very controlled, so you don't see that TI coming out quite as much in an
Right. Yeah.
obvious way.
Well, you see it come out that like you have obviously planned what you're doing and you do obviously have some kind of TI basis for it all. And
Yeah.
now you're just presenting it, you're just playing your character and presenting it in an FE way. But you can see there's an underlying plan and thought behind it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it would. It's funny because I feel like there have been times I've done several videos that didn't have a plan, and I was like, yeah, I can wing it. I know this, and
Yeah.
they always are like disastrous. Or if I do a video without a plan, it's just something that I know so well that it's planned out up here.
Right. Yeah.
I've never gone into a video being like, I'll just wing it. I can do this. I mean, with the exception interviews like this,
Right.
it's a bit, it's totally different thing. So I can be like, yeah, the responsibility is on you to have
Yeah.
the, the
Yeah.
outline. So yeah, for the plan is a very important thing for YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize how important it was until I started to realize that that was a thing, like with
Right.
NI, I was like, oh, that's why I'm doing that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So like I guess that would be a way to maybe work on your SE a little more too, is do more interviews like this and be more in the moment, which is probably not a comfortable state for you, but it's practicing your demons, I guess.
yeah, actually 2019, the year we're in, is the first time I like consciously tried to work on play energy. So, because I realized that I was just getting further and further into my mind, and I was like, I really got to open up a bit. So, I've been doing, yeah, more interviews like this, which is kind of it. I mean, it's a safe play energy because you're not going to ask me to go, skydiving after this.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, yeah. Because what I've realized is I fear play energy. It's like one of the worst things. It's like, oh crap, if I have to go out with a bunch of people and all of a sudden they want to do all these random things, it's it's having to then cope with uh, all
The
of the new
chaos. Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, all of the new stuff coming at you. So yeah, I've been
Right.
making a concerted effort to like try to do a bit more play, and a lot of times, I guess because I'm doing it somewhat awkwardly, more so in person. I think the interviews are safe enough, but when I try to do it more in person, sometimes it doesn't go so well because I'm not good at it, and then I have this thought of never again. I'm never doing that again. But yeah, that I think in some ways the animals can be more helpful when you're trying to look at things in a broader way and say this is the thing I need to work on. Um, yeah, so it's helped to make it a concerted
Yeah.
effort to do it.
Nice. Do you see that you also do the double deciding a lot?
Yeah, I think the it's always a thing where I can always understand other people's opinion. I guess what it would be though is that my savior would be to default to what other people's thoughts are and then to kind of downplay me.
Yeah.
And so I can, I, from my perspective, I feel like I'm doing the double deciding.
Right.
I feel like there is, um,
You
I
could
have
say
the
you could give two middle fingers to the tribe and be like, no, my reason's done. Like you feel comfortable in that way.
well, it's a little difficult to do
Okay.
that, but I think I feel like I can well, maybe not maybe not as far as the middle finger,
Yeah.
but the
Maybe not two, just one.
yeah, I am able to put my foot down with
Right.
that stuff at some point, but it can be that whole um, that energy of trying to keep up the FE as long as possible. Before
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, all right, we're stopping right here. Sorry, guys. So,
Yeah.
well, and it's also interesting because I think that you do, I don't know. I'm not sure that either double deciding or double observing is something that is like natural from birth. You know what I mean? Because they've talked about some people, like they mentioned Trump. He's like he doesn't even double decide. So that is something that I think I naturally always do, at least in my mind, is to be able to see
Right.
both sides of everything. But then it did take some effort to be able to build it up a bit so that it's usable. But it wasn't like a massive amount of effort,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I also see that in a lot of your videos, you're able to play characters and talk to yourself, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
like that's supposed to be double deciding.
Yeah, I'm constantly aware of the audience, and I'm always like, Frank, why did you say that? So, yeah, it's that is, I've kind of noticed that too. I'm like, oh, is that double deciding? Because um, it's it's really easy for me to anticipate like everyone else will, what everyone's reaction will be.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, it's weird because with an introverted decider, even if it's a demon, it's like I don't know. To me, I guess being in the middle, it's obvious in a way because I guess I'm like looking at it a lot, and so if I'm not, let me see if I can explain this in a way. Even though FE is a savior, it does feel like a little bit more of a process because it's extroverted, so it's subjective. I have to look around at it. Whereas the introverted one, it's there, and even if I'm trying to like suppress it, it's like obvious from the get go.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it is, with FE, it's also like just an immediate thing. Like, oh, I know how everyone's going to feel about that thing I just said, so I better address it. So,
Cool. Do you have anything that you want to talk about your type, maybe that other people might be interested in, or like getting over your demons, or I don't know, advice?
yeah, I would say that, well, a lot of what I do on my channel when I'm talking about INFJ stuff is I recommend basically what they do in OP is to work on the demons and to not be so, because FE especially, when it gets out of control, is you basically have no boundaries anymore. So I try to teach that as like, make sure you set up some boundaries with people. Like it's okay to make people mad. You can
Uh-huh.
put down. And then with the NI, that in the extreme is just being in your head all the time and never wanting to even set foot into reality.
Right.
So that's what I focus on a lot, especially now in my more recent videos with INFJs, is to work on those two lower functions. And it's with my channel, even though I know that there are the INFJ jumpers, I don't really address that anymore. I used to kind of mention it. Oh yeah, some INFJs are like they have TI as a savior, but most of the people come into my channel are just doing straight up Myers-Briggs,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just address it like they're a standard Myers-Briggs INFJ.
Right. And keep all that theory. Yeah, that's really cool use of the TIFE thing. Like you're keeping all the theory to yourself and you're presenting what the people want. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like because I can find a way to be like, yeah, maybe there are technically INFJs out there who this wouldn't apply to, who don't need to develop TI, but also they're not going to be watching the video because they probably haven't typed themselves as INFJ. So,
Uh,
and I also realize that there are a lot of non-INFJs who watch, whether they are mistyped or people who know that they are another type, but they still like to watch and they get something out of it. So,
yeah. Yeah.
and I think things like asserting healthy boundaries and getting out of your head are generally things that can apply to many people. I think
Right.
INFJs are going to struggle a lot with it, but that's what I focus on a lot. And what I guess, if there are any INFJs watching, I would just do that, do what Dave and Shan are recommending, and try to work on those demons and getting at the most basic level. It's just like getting out of your head and asserting boundaries.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot. So you have a YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the description, and you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. It's kind of irregularly scheduled, and I do some. I've started to do interviews with people. My last interview was with Dan Johnston, who's an ENFP guy who teaches about uh, designing a life for yourself, being location independent, and being an
Okay.
entrepreneur. So that's a cool episode. Check that out. It's the most recent one.
Cool. So what's your podcast more about? Still about typology or?
Yeah. Well, when I first started doing the podcast, it was kind of just longer form musings that I might have done in a video, but I stretched it out to an hour. But now I'm trying to do a bit more play energy, and
Cool.
bring in guests that would be interesting to my audience. And so on. And I want to eventually. Right now, I'm doing people who are sort of related to typology. Although I did interview one guy who's like a screenwriter who just randomly made a contact with. But I want to expand it more into YouTubers in general outside of the niche, the
Right.
typology, and especially people who focus on personal development and things like that, and maybe even eventually just people who are generally interesting and have positive things to say in their videos. And in many ways, it's just an excuse to kind of talk with people for a while.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Well,
Frank James.
Benjamin, I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure.